Hi guys, welcome to Delaware Studios. We'll be talking about how to save a JSON data into the SQLite database in Android. And we'll be using the DBMS tool right there out of the box from Android Studio, in which we're going to actually strip out the database container, that's the database itself, either from an emulator or from the device. We're actually going to be using an emulator. If you want to use a device, you might need to route or to root your device rather, and so that you can the DBMS will be able to trace your SQLite database of that particular application. I will be using an emulator, and we're going to actually be stripping out the database right from it, and we will be reading with any database tool out there right there in your OS. And I'll be using Ubuntu. You can even use Mac. You can use Windows. So we're actually going to be reading out the database, and we'll actually see the columns and the rows it's contained. So this is the best way to debug if you actually want to be sure if your application actually gets the data saved right there into the SQLite database. Without much ado, we'll be headed straight to the code, and I'll be headed straight to Audio Studio, and we'll be moving ahead from there. Right here we have the menu item JSON, which we're going to actually save to our database, which is in key value pairs, and they are in arrays, an object of an array. About we have the name of different fruits, the description, price, the category, and the photo. We have up to 25 to 30 items here, and we're actually going to save them into the database, and we're actually going to visualize the SQLite database. That's the beauty of this tutorial. From here, I head straight to the Java classes. We just don't need the default layout, which is the activity main, where we have the constraint layout and the hello world. That's just it. Because we're actually going to run this on the lay. It's not actually the UI that's working here. It's actually the background threads. Now we head straight to the main activity. The main activity we only initialize the DB helper, but we will come over here after we might have explained the contract and the DB helper. Right there in the subpackage called data, we have two classes, DB contract and the DB helper. Let's start with the DB contract. The DB contract only gives it's a kind of an helper class that gives the base columns of your structure, which is the relational database that you are trying to use, whereby you declare the table name, the column name, the columns that you're using. Firstly, you declare the table, the name of the table, you give it a kind of constant, a final constant, which is going to be here. So now the table name is menu. The column name, we have different columns. We have 5 columns we're using right here: the name, the description, the price, the category, and the photo. By default, we're going to add the ID, which is actually the identifier. That's which is the right intelligence. That is a unique identifier to each row right there in your columns. We have this setup, so you have to set this out right there in the static final class called an entry. It implements the base column, which you can actually see vividly right there. So once you have the setup, you head straight to your helper. You need the DB helper class. So I actually created another class called DB helper, which extends the SQLite open helper over here. And we declare the tag. It's always good to have a tag for debug purpose, so you can easily read that from the console. And we have some fields that we have here: the resources, the database name, very important. And before I continue, once you declare the class DB helper extends the SQLite open helper, you must implement two methods. And the methods are the onCreate, very important, and the onUpgrade of your database, very important. These two methods must be implemented right there in your class, which extends the SQLite open helper. Let's move on. We have the class, the fields declared, the database name, which we gave MenuDB, the database version called 1. So once you make amendments right there in your table, you and you actually have the database right there running on the device, and you want to actually push the change, it's advisable, it's recommended to increase your database version so that you don't have to force the user to uninstall the application, so that it's actually going to understand that, okay, there's been an increase or there's been an update right there in the database. That's the essence. Let's move further. We call on the SQLite database, give it an object called DB. And now here we have the constructor, whereby we pass the super, which is the super class, passing the context, which is like this class, the database name, and the null, the identifier, and the version. Right there, we need the resources. Now, this resources is actually going to enable us to read the raw JSON. Now, this JSON is right embedded right there in the source. So that's why we need this, actually called the context get resources. And now we instantiate the DB to get the writable database. You have to do that. Very important. Right there in the create, this is where we create the table, based on the columns we've created right there in the contract. We have the final string SQL create box table. That's the name of the table, the name of the table structure, not actually the name of the table. The name of the table is right there in the DB contract which we've declared. Now we call this if you're familiar with SQL, the relational database, or you've used MySQL, probably you're coming from the web, you should be familiar with SQL syntax. The statements we make, whereby we create, you update, you delete, you truncate, you drop a table, we do a lot of things right there on the relational database. Now we want to create a table. We create table statement. This is a concatenation sign, and we're calling on the table name which we have right there declared in the contract. This is the path, the menu entry, the table name. So we have that set, and now we need to declare the fields, which is the columns that we'll be using. If you notice, we included the ID, as the integer primary key. It's a primary identifier to each row, and we set it to auto increment. This is actually done automatically. Any row or any insertion, we actually increase this ID, and it's unique to each row. That's fine. Now we have the column name declared, the description, the price, the category, and the photo. We have most of them right there as a text, and we can also set some other parameters, like the corner name should be unique. Don't give the same name. That's why we add that unique. Most times emails too can be set to unique, and it should not be null. Not null. It's not going to accept any null values. That's just what that is. We have the description, text not null, the price not null. Now you can also use other data types. You can use integer, you can use float, you can use double. You can play around with all those data type right there using database. And now, if you should notice, we execute the SQL, which is the create box table. We call on the DB to execute SQL, and once that is successful, we log that to the console, so that we'll be able to show that database was created successfully. That's fine. So let's move ahead. Right there, I'm not going to talk about this method now, because we have a depending method that should run before this should actually trigger. So we'll be heading straight to that before we come back to this. We have the on upgrade. Probably if you want to upgrade, you can either drop a table and recreate. That's just what usually go into this particular method. You drop a table and you recreate. Fine. We have this method that read data to the DB. This method right there, I won't talk about this now. I'll talk about the read JSON data from file. This should run first before that will trigger. This is actually going to read the raw JSON from the file, from the raw folder, which is called the menu item JSON. Now we use our input stream, set that to null. We instantiate the string builder, and create an object from it called builder. Now we're going to use a try and catch braces, whereby we set the JSON data string, to null, And we call on the M resources that we actually created earlier right there in the constructor, the DB helper. If you notice the M resources over here, and we're going to actually call the raw file, which is the menu item JSON over here. We pass that to the buffer reader. The buffer reader is going to read that for us, and we instantiate the new input stream reader to which actually has the UTF-8 encoding format, and that should be a while loop, loop through the JSON data, and after looping is going to actually be passing it right into the JSON data string, and we append each of the data to the builder. That's what it's doing in each loop of the JSON data. Finally, if the input stream is not null, it's actually going to close the stream, and that's fine. So we need that to be closed. Just don't open up the input stream, without any work further. Now we need to return the new string builder. This is what we need, because we've actually appended the JSON data string to the builder in each iteration, in each loop. Now we need to return this builder as a string value, which we pass right there into the read data to DB. Once we have that, we have everything as a string. Now we need to read that string and save it to the SQLite database. That's just gimmick. That's the brain behind it. And now we have a parameter of SQLite database, which acts the DB as the object, and it's going to throw two exceptions. It's either the IO exception or the JSON exception. The IO exception means that's input and output exception. Probably the file is not found. Probably the JSON data string is not there. It's a null. And we have the JSON exception. Probably in the course of decoding, in the course of decompiling the string and reading the JSON files, there's an error triggers in the process. It's actually going to trigger the JSON exception. So that's the two exceptions that we might be accepting. We have the IO exception. That's probably JSON data string is null, and probably there's an error while by reading the JSON itself. Fine, that's cool. Now we're going to actually create the fields, which is for the name, description, price, category, photo. Those are the values we are expecting from the JSON. Now we do a try and catch to further catch up the exception. That's the essence of try and catch. It's actually running on the background thread, and we have that set. The JSON data string, that's a string we're going to actually pass the builder, that we got from the read JSON data from file, which is this method. Cool. That's a builder string, and we pass that into the JSON data string over there. We need a JSON array because this is in an array. Let's look at the JSON again one more time, and you notice this first bracket before the curly brace. The bracket signifies what? Array. That's just it. Back to the DB helper. What about we instantiate the JSON array? We're passing the JSON data string. This parameter. We have an array. What we're gonna do? We do a for loop. We have to iterate through. So from each iteration, we can extract the values based on the first object, the second object, the third object. Those will go into the rows. Can you get how they work? That's just how it works. In the for loop, we have the string, still the name, description, price, category, photo. Cool. We pass in the menu item JSON array that we got from the array itself. The length, we must visualize the length. That is going to be the argument. So that we won't have an infinite loop. The length is very important there. We've gotten the length. So it's actually going to know where to stop. We have the menu item object. In an array, we have the object. In the object, we have key values. That's just it. In the object, we have key values. Now we talk about the object so that we're going to know the position. Get the JSON object I. I is the counter, the position, the first one, the first index 0. Yeah. So in each iteration, it continues to add up. That's why we didn't add code here to be 0. It should be I. So if the iteration continues, this will continue to change. It's a counter variable. Cool. In the process, we're going to get a string for each one: the name, the description, the price, the category, and the photo. We'll pass them right there into the variable name, description, price, category, and photo. Cool. We call on content values. Very cool. We need the content values to access to put data right there in the database, in the SQLite database. We need a content value, so we actually call on the content value class. We instantiate, we created an object called the menu values. In this menu value, that's when we'll be able to put data right there in the DB contract, the entry, which is the static class, and the column name, the column description, the price, the category, the photo, and we pass in its appropriate variables. Can you see that? Since they are containers, they have values. In each iteration, they store values. You pass them right there into the menu values, which is the content values. And you insert, you call on the DB insert, just like the normal insert you do right there in your SQL. Insert the table name, that's you pass null, that's like the parameters you declared, but the values must be set here, the menu values. In subsequent videos, we'll talk about bulk inserts. Probably you want to insert to two different tables. This might not be the appropriate way to do it. This is just for a single table, quite straightforward. In each iteration, keep on inserting. But now you want to insert to two tables. You can decide to use a bulk insert or use the batch method right there from the content provider. Cool. From there, we log to be sure that all tables are inserted and even call the menu values, so that we actually be sure that okay, this is inserted successfully. In the process, we need to catch for JSON exception because we're actually reading JSON and we needed to log that right there appropriately. Cool. That takes us down to the onCreate. These two methods will not be triggered if the onCreate is not signified that please made this method work. It should just be redundant. It's not going to work. It's going to tell you that it's never used. So that's why we need to create these over here. That's why we use a try and catch block here to read data to DB, and we pass the DB, which is right there from the SQLite database. From the onCreate, we pass this as a parameter because that's the parameter we need, and that's the same DB that we used here to actually insert into the database. That's fine. So that's why we did a try and catch blocks here. You need to catch for IO exception and you need to catch for JSON exception. Fine. So with that, you have that saved to your database. Plain, pure. No hassles. That's just it. That's how it works. You have it saved in your database. So we need to just instantiate in the main activity so that to let the main activity be aware that something is happening. That's why we call on the DB helper. We instantiate DB helper and we just have that done. So once you run this application, automatically your emulator, your device you're running it in, will create a database, which we've actually made it the name called ManyDB. And also it's going to create the columns, create the rows, and populate them with the JSON data you've actually passed into them. So this is just how to do it. This is a simple way to create your contract and your DB helper to actually create your database. And now we're even reading from the JSON. That's the beauty of it. So it can even be an online JSON. We'll still talk about a lot of things when it comes to SQLite, or we'll talk about content provider, where we talk about the sync adapter, we can talk about widgets. We get to talk about all this in previous subsequent videos. But for now, you'll be wondering, how am I going to be sure that this is actually saved right there in my device, right there in my emulator? I can see these data. I can be able to be sure, okay, that's how I've been able to accomplish this task. My database is right there sitting in my device or my emulator. With the help of one powerful tool in the Android monitor called the DBMS, we can be able to visualize that. I will show you that in the video. I'm actually using an emulator, so because I would need to root my device, which I can do right now, but emulator could be fine. That's cool. You can also try an emulator, and I will actually show you how to go about this. Pay attentive to this. Click on your tools, move to Android. This is Android Studio 2.3. upwards. You can also find it in 2 points, but majorly I recommended use 2 point series of Android Studio. Move right there to the Android device monitor. Click on this. Once you click on this, you're going to have an interface of this nature, which is this, with this, you can easily, from the left hand side of the screen, if you notice, this is my emulator, the Nexus 5X API 21. If your device is also there, you'll be able to see that right there, probably listed. So right there in the Nexus, you can see the list, the package of applications I have right there in this emulator, which I can actually show you right there, which is over here. Can you see the app, the JSON to SQLite? Cool. Just minimize that. So you have the packages right there at the left. Right there in the right, or probably in the center, we have different tabs here: the threads, the heap, allocation, network, file explorer, emulator, and system. You click on the file explorer tab. Let me try to make this larger, because we're actually concentrating on the file explorer. Right there, you search for the data. Once you get the data, try to expand this, and you need to actually scroll down to search for the package of your application right there in the data. You come to this, we're actually on example, so I'm actually looking for the package example .deloroy.json to SQLite over there. You expand that as well. If you notice, we have the cache, or let's say the cache anyway. We have the databases. You can have more than one database right there on that application sitting on the emulator. Right in the databases, let's expand to see what we have. Do you notice we have the menu.db and the menu.db journal? You go for the menu.db. If you should look at the size, it's up to like 24 KB. Definitely there are contents right in there. So this is what we actually need. If you notice, it's corresponding to the DB name we created called menu.db over here. Cool. Back to the Android device monitor, or something I call DBMS, something I call it Android device monitor. And right there, you click on the menu DB, and we actually need this file. We need to look at the data right inside the file. Probably will have it saved correctly or not. You come over here. Can you see two kind of icons? The first one is called the pull a file from the device. Once you click on this, we're going to actually extract this particular highlighted file down to your machine. Let's click on it. It's actually going to tell you where to save this. Can you see this? It's telling me where I'm going to save this. Let's pick. Let me pick. Let's save it right there in the Android Studio projects, and let's have it right there because we have all our Android Studio projects right there in one folder. We'll save it there, the menu DB, or we'll actually need a cool. We have a pull down, and it's actually saved right there in the directory we pointed it at. Fine, and we can easily search for that probably, and let's look for it. Cool. Can you see this? The menu DB right there in the Android Studio project. That's where the file is. Well, you can just open this file without a dedicated software to actually read the content of the SQLite database. You need to install, let's say, a DB browser for SQLite. I have that running on the Ubuntu machine. You can actually have that too on Windows, on Mac. Cool. Just check out for it. You can actually Google, search for SQLite reader or browser, for your OS. You get that. So I have this right there called the DB browser for SQLite, and I can easily open a database. I click on open database, whereby it's going to tell me to point out which path I'm going to actually get that database from. It's dedicated to SQLite alone. You have MySQL too. We have this called MenuDB, and let me open up. Fine. Can you see that? I have the schema of this database. Sometimes you call it the metadata, of a database. Right there we have the tables. It's actually created 3 tables, but you need a many table. which we created. These are other metadata that actually ties up the main table, the hardware metadata, the SQLite sequence, and so on. Now this is the menu table, which has how many columns? We are the ID is the what? The primary. Can you see that? The integer primary key auto increment. We have the name, the description, price, category, photo. Our columns: int, text, 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 integer, data type. Cool. We need to browse data. Let's browse data. Let's see what we have. Come over here, click on menu. Can you see? You have the data right saved. From here, you can be able to know the structure, the content of your SQLite database. So you'll be so sure that yes, I have a running database, a running code that created the database and also implemented and pushed all JSON data right inside the database. That's a thumbs up for this, and you can easily scroll through. I have up to 41 content right there, which were created correctly. No corrupted entry. You should also point out for that, because sometimes you have a corrupted DB. Some entries are not well inserted and things like that. You can see all of them are well inserted and correctly. They are all correct. You can easily look at this. If there's any error whatsoever, you try to recreate or rerun the code, or probably find a bug somewhere. But this is fine. It's actually work flawlessly and it's okay. So this is just how to read your data from the SQLite database. You can actually get it. You can actually see it. Don't think it's not. You can see that it's invisible. That it's somewhere. That it's actually hidden somewhere. But right there, you can get to see it. And this is just how to go about it. In our subsequent videos, we're talking about content provider. We're talking about sync adapter. We're talking about a lot. We're talking about jet. We're talking about background threads and so on. And I would like you guys to actually give a comment. Please, what kind of video are you guys expecting next? What kind of video do you guys really want to watch out for? I got comments that you guys need a clone of Uber. That will be coming pretty later on. I won't lie to you. There's a lot that's going to go into developing that kind of clone. You should understand how everything goes. A lot of resources here and there which are still not available, which are actually going to developing a kind of bespoke app like Uber. But come up with other snippets that you feel that will be suitable, or you feel that I should produce, or I should shoot, or I should talk about. Some other tutorials out there, some other things, hidden aspects that you want me to talk about. Just leave a comment below and please let me know. And also I will be uploading the source code to my GitHub, as I've always been doing, to support each of my tutorial. And I will catch you up in the next tutorial, about we get to talk about some other juicy and funky things in Android development. Thank you guys for hanging out with me throughout this tutorial. Have a pleasant time.